everybody, and welcome to a very special top 5 board gaming video. In this particular video, it's special because I'm going to be talking about a specific mechanic. That is to say, this is a mechanic within board gaming, and these are the games I think do it very, very well. The mechanic we'll be talking about is AI, or artificial intelligence. More often than not, this is implemented in a board game to allow for solo play. A lot of games do this, and they have varying degrees of complexity. Some games go all out and make it really, really insanely complex. Others have something extremely simplistic where it's just you're drawing new cards and putting it into a pile or something along those lines. I've got a bit of a mix of everything. There were a lot of games that I considered for this. For example, Mage Knight has a very, very simple AI mechanic for its solo that works perfectly well. It does a very good job. It does what it needs to do. Same thing with Thunderstone. Thunderstone Advance has a similar mechanic to Mage Knight where you're essentially just flipping cards over and just seeing what you get out of it, and it's just like refilling stuff. In this, I tried to focus a little bit more on AIs that are more interactive, sort of mind map based and stuff like that. But that said, I would love to hear what you guys have to say about this. What do you think of AI mechanics in general? What do you think about them in terms of if you're doing like a two-player game and you've got a third that's an AI that you guys are switching off control of? What do you think of solo games that do it? What do you think of having AIs in general? I am very, very curious to hear what you guys have to say, as always. And of course, if you haven't done so already, please take a look at my Facebook and my Twitter pages where I'm posting new videos, contests, giveaways, all sorts of cool stuff. I would love to hear from you guys there as well as in the comments. But with that, we're going to get started with my number 5. At number 5, I've got the only game on this list that I actually do not own. It's a very simple, relatively quick card game called the Castles of Burgundy, or Castles of Burgundy, however you wish to pronounce it. This is at the bottom of the list because it's probably the most simplistic of the AIs that are on this list, but it's still pretty interesting, and it has a unique mechanic in terms of how it actually functions with interaction of the player. So the idea is that the AI gets a bunch of cards and is trying to build up their particular castle thing, their tableau, and you are essentially racing against the AI. And after every round, you're actually checking to make certain that you have more victory points than the AI. If at any time you have fewer victory points, then you lose and the AI wins. So it's kind of cool in that sense. It's really interesting, but in the end, it's a random thing. It's random cards. You have relatively little in terms of the mind map and how the game actually functions with the AI, but it still works really well. And as far as simple AIs go, I think it's implemented in the best way. So that is why Castles of Burgundy, or Castles of Burgundy, whichever one you want to use to pronounce it, is my number 5. At number 4, I have one of my favorite scientifically themed games that, for me at least, sort of came out of nowhere and was a bit of a surprise in terms of how much I loved it, because primarily it's based around stocks. The game itself is Tesla versus Edison, War of Currents. And this game is amazing. That's really what it boils down to. I love this game. I love the way it works. I love the history behind it. You've got the actual characters, the people involved in things. Again, a lot of it is stock based, so that's really what you're talking about, is stocks moving up and down and around, as well as building up on a map and all this kind of thing. It's really impressive. That said, the AI is actually not in here. It's not in the base game. It's actually in this because I got the broken token thing, but it's not in the base. Instead, it is in the expansion Powering Up. It's upside down. It's in Powering Up. So both of these were Kickstarters. I got them both from the Kickstarter campaigns, and essentially the expansion pack added in a bunch of cards that are specific for the AI and allows the AI to function. So in that sense, this is relatively unique because you have a randomizer associated with the AI, a little bit at least. And it's really, really impressive how well it integrates with the game. That said, there's two main reasons that this is lower on the list. First, the fact that it's in an expansion. That's kind of, I mean, it's neither really here nor there. It's just something. The other major reason is the fact that a big part of this game is the player interaction and how you're working with your other players or working against them. I mean, you're talking about a stock game, you're talking about Wall Street, negotiation, money changing hands, all that kind of stuff. And for that, I personally feel that you really need to have the social aspect for a game like this. The AI is great, it works wonderfully, and it's a uniquely built mechanic, but for the game itself, for the purpose of the game and how it is meant to function, I think it just works better with more players. But solo, it really is good, and that's why Tesla vs. Edison is still my number 4. At number 3, I've got a game that is similar to Tesla vs. Edison in terms of the AI aspect came later on after the game, but this one is arguably the most complex in terms of how the AI actually functions that I have on this entire list, and that is Race for the Galaxy. I have talked about Race for the Galaxy in the solo context many times, and the thing is that the solo rules were added, I believe, in the first expansion, if I'm not mistaken. It was added pretty early on. But the thing is, the way that it works is pretty complex. There's a lot of little cardboard pieces and stuff that are very specific for just the solo game, and there's a bunch of little caveats with like mind maps and stuff like that in terms of how the AI responds to different cards it gets, or the starting planet that it gets, or how it's going to work, if it's going to go for military, all this kind of stuff. Because part of the issue is that as this game went on and got more and more expansions, it added more and more mechanics. So it added, for example, the direct conflict where you can actually fight your opponent's other groups, your opponent's tableau. It added in new and different tableau building capabilities and new cards. It added in all sorts of stuff. It's pretty ridiculous. So the solo game for this is huge, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it means that, like I said, it's probably the most complex in terms of how it actually functions, because there's a lot you need to think about when you are playing this game solo. That said, it is a very enjoyable solo experience. It is a program, it's a well done mind map effectively, just like many of these other games. And once you get used to it, it's actually pretty smooth and it works very well. And the AI is actually a good player, and it feels like you're playing against another player, which is nice, and that's kind of the point. But it's lower on the list just because of the sheer complexity of the game itself. But either way, Race for the Galaxy, my number 3. At number 2, I've got a game that is sort of a follow-up to one of my favorite two-player strategy games that involves something that happened very recently, and that is Labyrinth, The War on Terror. And this is, I mean, it depends. You can call it a war game. I personally wouldn't call it a war game, but that's a whole other story. This particular game, the idea is that you have one side playing as the US or the Allies and the other side playing as jihadists. And the idea is, if you're playing it solo, you've got a mind map based AI. And I can actually show it to you guys real quick. It's pretty cool. I like it because the game itself is actually surprisingly complex, but the way that the AI functions is actually very simple. So right here, this is the mind map for it. So you can see it's actually just made up of several different questions. So essentially, the AI is always going to be the jihadists, all right? So it's always going to be the quote bad guys. And essentially it's how are you going to play your card? and then it says what are you going to be doing, where are you going to be doing it, and then the exact operation that you will be doing. So it's great. I mean, this is essentially how you write out programs, right? This is like how you map up what a program does. So it's surprisingly convenient, and it's very, very easy to learn. I mean, it's not quick to play. You wouldn't expect it to be quick to play because it's a really big, it's a pretty beefy game. But at the same time, when I first tried it, I was genuinely surprised how readily and how well they were able to sort of boil down such a complex game into a reasonable, digestible solo experience. Because again, like with Race for the Galaxy, it is overly complex initially when you're first trying to play it, whereas with this, very, very simple for something that is so complex. And I was really surprised. I've had a blast with it. That said, similarly to something like with Tesla versus Edison, like I was talking about a while ago, playing with another human really changes the strategy. It changes how you play the game. So playing against an AI, you essentially know what they're going to do because you can look at what they're going to do, at least to an extent. And it's really randomized in terms of what they do. So it's a little bit frustrating in that sense. You remove some of the strategy, but it's still a wonderful AI solo experience. And so for all that, Labyrinth is my number 2. At number 1, I have a game that takes the AI to a literal AI. This is a game that utilizes an app in order to run the entire thing. It is XCOM, the board game. It's based off of one of my favorite tactical shooting video games, and the board game itself actually turned out very, very well, and I am extremely happy about that. The unique thing for this is the fact that you have an app running on your smartphone or tablet, whatever it happens to be, that is controlling different events within the game. So how much money are you going to get, how can you distribute it, how many aliens are attacking, where are they going, all of that kind of stuff. That is all happening in real time through the app. So there's a couple of really interesting things that come from that. You get very good replayability, you get really good versatility, you get a lot of different scenarios you can run, not to mention the fact that potentially it is Fantasy Flight, and then 2K and Fraxis, who made the video game, you can potentially have patches that will give you more scenarios. So you have an expandable board game that may not need actual expansions type of thing. So it's really, really cool in that sense. But as far as the AI is concerned, it's, like I said, very unique because it's just an option in the app. All you need to do is select that you're doing a solo game, and then it'll lay everything out for you and it'll control everything for you. You don't have to worry about shuffling up cards. You don't have to worry about, you know, what's like following a mind map or anything like that, because everything is laying out for you within the app. And one of the best things about the AI experience with XCOM is just the fact that it is very similar to the quote actual game, simply because you're still using the app in order to play. And so you're going to be getting effectively very similar, if not completely identical, scenarios and events and stuff like that with the solo game that you do with, you know, a 3 or a 5 player game or however many people it is. But either way, great game, wonderful AI experience, probably the one that feels the most like the actual game, the original game. XCOM, the board game, my number 1. Well, folks, that's going to be it for me. I hope that you enjoyed this AI mechanic focused top 5 list. Once again, as always, I would love to hear what you guys have to say, whether it's about AIs in board games in general, or just like the games that I talked about. Do you enjoy the AIs? Do you not enjoy them? Do you think it's something that needs to be better, that could be better? All that kind of stuff. You guys know I love hearing from you, and I love talking with you about all this kind of thing. So please put any and all thoughts into the comments below. Once again, again, if you haven't done it already, please take a look at my Facebook and my Twitter so that you can get all of the news and updates, new videos, streaming, giveaways, contests, articles, all sorts of cool stuff. You guys know I just love reaching out and talking to you, but once again, I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you very, very much for watching, and I will see you next time.